The June 2025 speaker series of the KPU Virtual Reality Lab. This is an initiative of the lab to bring exciting developments in the world of VR and AR to as broad a population as possible. We have an exciting speaker today, Evan Sitler-Bates, who will be talking about VR training for emergency services, and there'll be more of an introduction in a moment. The VR lab started in about 2019. Really as an idea of creating a creative space for students and collaborators, faculty members, community, and industry to come together and really explore the potential of VR and AR for education, for research, for workshops, and really any area that people wanted to explore the technology in. And we have done that work. We have trained countless research assistants, honors students. We have worked with industry. We've developed workshops for students and community groups. And it's a really exciting place for people to take on different roles, develop their skills in this space, which is really one of the technologies of the current and the future. So the lab is doing great work. We have a physical space, we have equipment, we have lots of students with different ideas and projects going on. So I wanted to share that excitement as this kind of idea has come to fruition and continues to develop. I will now hand it over to one of our student leaders.
Thank you, Dr. Dastur. I would like to welcome everyone again to our June Speaker Series event on behalf of KPU's Virtual Reality Lab. Before we begin, on behalf of KPU, respectfully acknowledge that we live, work, and study in a region that overlaps with the unceded traditional and ancestral First Nations territories of the Musqueam, the Katzie, the Samiamu, Tawasin, Kukai, and Coquitlam, with the Kwantlen First Nation, which has gifted its name to the university. We're thrilled to have you all here today to explore the incredible potential of VR technology in various fields. It's an honor to introduce Evan Sitler-Bates. Evan is a co-founder and CEO of XpertVR with a background in entrepreneurship and experiential learning. He currently leads XpertVR, a Canadian company specializing in immersive training tools for emergency services and public safety. In this online talk, Training Tomorrow's Heroes for XR for Emergency Responders, Evan will walk us through how XR is being used to prepare those on the front lines, combining realism, care, and innovation to train people who support us. The agenda today includes a 45-minute presentation by Evan with opportunities throughout his talk for questions with a designated Q&A section as well. Without further ado, please join in giving me a warm welcome to Evan.
Thank you for having me. It's so cool to hear more about KPU's lab here. I think not many universities or colleges have these sorts of labs, so it's an honor to be here. And it's cool to see some familiar faces. Matt, nice to see you in the audience here. Thank you for having me. I'll share my screen here to share the presentation, and then we can jump into it. Can you see that? Is it working? Perfect. So yeah, if you see me looking up, I have two screens here, so just looking up at the presentation. But yeah, if anybody has any questions as we go here, feel free just to stop me and jump in. Happy to answer questions along the way, or we'll have a discussion at the end, like Shane said. Right. So yeah, quick extra background there about myself and XpertVR. Obviously, huge XR nerd. I've been in the space for over 10 years now, so love virtual reality, love where things are heading with mixed reality and augmented reality and all the connected technologies. As Shane said, lifelong entrepreneur. My parents were entrepreneurs, so that kind of helped me get into the space. And in 2016, 2017, I brought these two passions together. Starting XpertVR, and now I've done over 100 VR projects working with the incredible team at XpertVR. And to give some more background there, we're a Canadian-based company based out of Niagara Falls and Toronto. We have 8 years in the development space and 5 years working in the emergency services. So lots of incredible projects. A lot of the videos you'll see through this presentation are things that we've built at XpertVR, but I also have some great examples from other companies that are really innovating in the first responder space when it comes to XR. A little bit more background on XpertVR, just so you can see who we're working with all kinds of different emergency responders, as well as colleges and universities in the emergency responders, first responder space. To note, San Diego Fire is the biggest fire department we work with. We're also working with BC Wildfire Services, as well as the Ontario Fire Marshal, so some larger organizations where we're getting all kinds of incredible feedback and building some really cool things with different organizations at all sorts of different levels. And then Matt is here from Cognitive 3D, so I'll give them a shout out. They're one of our partners. We're just starting up with doing some really cool things when it comes to data collection and bringing data from our virtual reality simulations to the trainees that have gone through them. So for those that are in the VR space, you're part of this lab, you've probably seen some of these stats or all of these stats before, but for anybody that is new to the training space in virtual reality, I like to highlight PwC's study. They compared virtual reality training to classroom training and e-learning. And they found that first off, students had a 3.75 times higher emotional connection to virtual reality when compared to classrooms. And a great antidote that we had when doing this training at Conestoga College was a student. She was going through one of our virtual reality search and rescue scenarios, which you'll see in a second. And she went down into the basement of a house. There were, I think, 6 patients that she had to rescue in this basement. And she kind of forgot all of her training because she was so immersed. She saw these people yelling out for help, and she thought she was in the garage, not in the basement. So when she started searching for the door to get out of the garage, she missed the stairs to get out of the basement. She passed out virtually. She was completely fine. Other firefighters came in and rescued her, and then she was able to learn from that experience because it's all virtual. But having that emotional connection just really shows what VR can do. Secondly, the studies have found up to 1,600% greater retention rate. You're going through the simulation, you're fully interacting with everything that you do, so you're retaining that knowledge and those memories into the future instead of just stats and things that you read on paper. And then coming out of these experiences, we found, and PwC found, people were 275% more confident in the skills that they had learned. So how is VR being used by firefighters? That's where we specialize. And then after this, I'll show other first responders and where it's being used in other areas. First, very basic public education. So you might think about the training side of things, but obviously the community are the ones that can prevent these fires from happening so that the first responders don't have to be there, even if they are trained on how to handle it. So this is a simulation that allows somebody to go, usually students or younger people, allowing to go into an apartment and just maintain their smoke alarms. So you're going in here and you'll see here, first you're switching out, well, first I skipped past the first one, you're just checking the smoke alarm, but the second one, you're switching out the battery, just learning how to do that, very basic. And then the third smoke alarm, you're actually switching out the wiring harness. So just going through and getting that basic knowledge so that a student can go home to their parents and say, hey, I switched out a smoke alarm today, we should go around the house and check all of ours. So just very basic knowledge, but helps the fire department stop emergencies before they happen. Then we have simulations that are built for specific use cases. So this is a hazardous material identification simulation where you're not in there with multiple people. There's a very specific use case that you want to train on. So in this example, this is mustard gas, I believe, coming out of this tanker. You'll see all kinds of other leakages that are happening around this shipping yard. And you're just going in, you have access to your emergency response guide, which every firefighter is very familiar with. And you're going in and identifying what is this emergency and how do we cordon off this area? Where's the wind blowing? What's the temperature? All these things that could affect the emergency that's now unfolding. So this just allows somebody going in by themselves to like really train on a skill. And we find this is a great way for new first responders to practice their VR skills, to practice specific skills before they enter into a larger training simulation. Then we have training on very specific tools. So we find that this is a great way for first responders to get in and train on a specific tool before they're in a large emergency. So not even really a scenario that they're training on or something that's going on, but just having access to certain tools or roles. So I will say this is kind of a beta that we're working on right now, but I love this example of just fire suppression. So you can see here, this is just a great type of simulation to jump in. You have access to one tool and you're just practicing how to use that tool. And we found that this can have a huge impact on somebody when they're eventually going into a full training simulation, where they've really mastered how to use that tool in virtual reality and how all the controls work and those sorts of things. And then our bread and butter at XpertVR, and what most people are thinking of when they're thinking of VR training for first responders, is a larger scenario. So this is one of our search and rescue scenarios where there's a whole 2-story house with a basement that you're entering, and you're training on how to go through this house, how to follow all of your search procedures. So for firefighters, they have to do a left-hand, right-hand search where basically they hold their hand to one wall while they're going around the whole building. So you can see here on the mini map, this firefighter, they just ran in, went and got somebody. That's not the right way to search. Normally they should be going around and following the outside of the wall. So this is kind of the commander view outside that we've seen that's very beneficial, that allows somebody as a instructor or a trainer to view what are your trainees doing inside the simulation and give them feedback live time. Here's me with some firefighters going through the simulation. And so this is mixing all of the skills. You have all of your tools accessible to you. You can see there an axe and a Halligan bar. They have their SCBA, their breathing apparatus on them, and they're going through the simulation and fully training on every skill, using every tool, mixing everything that they've learned into one. So what are first responders saying about VR, about XpertVR, but just VR in general? We worked a lot with Conestoga College over the past couple of years with their firefighters. And this is Brad Kuhneman on the left here. He's one of their pre-service fire instructors. And his feedback was the class performance that he saw was the best in the all 13 years that he's been teaching because of virtual reality. And that comes down to the normal training procedure for firefighters at Conestoga College and at most places is you spend 3 months, 3 to 6 months, I guess, sitting down in front of PowerPoints, and you're learning everything from PowerPoints, from textbooks, maybe some videos that you're watching. And then you go to a live burn where they have a large cement building that they set on fire, and you put on all your gear, and you have to go in and navigate that building, either putting out the fire, rescuing people, or doing other tasks. So you're kind of just thrown right from that classroom into that live training. And that can be great because you're a student, you're thrown into the fire, and you get to practice your skills. But introducing virtual reality, they were able to go into these types of live burns at least 3 times before the actual live burn in the real world, in the physical world. So really just improved their training and allowed them to practice more advanced skills once they got to that live training ground. Similarly, we met with a fire chief from one of the top Canadian fire departments more recently, and just comparing our VR technology to all the other software training that's out there when it comes to PowerPoints, videos, and other things. And just the response was that no one could touch what VR is doing to training. So how else do first responders use XR? I guess quickly, I'll pause there. Any questions about any of the videos I've shown so far, any of the stats or anything coming up?
I just had a quick question.
For sure.
So the system that you have for the VR, can the system adapt to like different skill level, like the rookie versus the commander?
Great question. Yeah. So how we build our simulations, I think it's different for every VR company that's out there, but how we build our simulations is more of a sandbox. So there's an emergency happening, you have all of your tools, and you're jumping in there, and you have to pick a role because you're in there with multiple people. So somebody is going to pick the incident command role where they're commanding the whole scene. They're telling somebody to go do search and rescue, somebody to do fire suppression. But if you're a rookie, you're in there, you're just in there as the fire suppression person or the search and rescue person. So yeah, it doesn't necessarily adapt, but it's built so that anybody with any role or skill level can jump in.
Okay. Thank you for answering.
Could I jump in with a quick question, Evan?
For sure.
So since we're talking about fire services, I'm curious how realistic it is, given that in a real fire, obviously there'd be heat and smoke and certain noises and unpredictable. And how do you capture that aspect to make it realistic?
Yeah, it's a great question. So one of our main competitors, actually, they do have like a full heat vest that you wear. You wear like a cylinder on your back that actually houses a computer, so they have a little bit more compute power because we do everything standalone now. And then you also have like a nozzle that you can like feel kick back. And the feedback that we've been getting from some of our main clients, like San Diego Fire, is that while that's great and it adds maybe an extra 10% of realism to the simulation, it's not what they're training on. They know how to carry their gear. They know that there's heat when they go into a fire. So they're really trying to train on the specific skills that they're going in to train on. So those extra things, they add a lot of costs. They make it so it's not so scalable to allow many firefighters to go through. So we've kind of stayed away from it. It is something we may add in the future, and it is possible to add that realism. But yeah, the feedback that we've gotten is that it's not necessarily needed.
Good to know.
Matt, I saw that your hand was raised as well.
Yeah, you might be covering this a little later, but I was curious about the sort of the difference between, it sounds like you're targeting colleges and other instructional institutions as part of your scenarios. And then you also have fire departments that are, working firefighters. Can you talk a bit about maybe the difference between the training for like at a college level versus at the professional level?
For sure. Yeah. So basically over the past 5 years, we've been very focused on the college level, and now we're just starting to branch, or over the past year, we've been starting to branch into the professional fire service, and that's where we're starting to work with the provincial level governments and San Diego Fire and others. So the difference that we see is the kind of the base skills versus the understanding of a scenario. So basically at the base skills, communication, going on the radio and calling out, this is where I've entered I've entered the alpha beta corner of the house, and you have those, or alpha bravo, sorry, those sorts of communications, talking to your teammates, deciding who's going to do what role. All of those kind of basic things are things that at the college level, they have no skills of how to do those. They don't know how to do like forced entry either, of like how to break down a door, all of those sorts of things. So it's really teaching all of those like base level skills and putting that into a scenario where they can kind of just practice them, but you're not necessarily aiming at how fast you put out a fire, how fast you rescue people, and controlling the whole scene. Whereas on the firefighter professional level, you're practicing, you're trying to speed up those times, and then you're practicing the higher level skills of, I'm an incident command, I'm going to order you to go do fire suppression, you're going to go do search and rescue, and I'm going to monitor the scene. We're currently adding controls so that we can have equipment malfunction or debris fall from the ceiling. So adding all of those extra things are things that the college level would never deal with. But at that higher level, they have to be prepared for those emergencies, and they already know those base skills. Reesha.
I was wondering if, I know this topic isn't at all like mostly about AI, it's about VR and XR, but I was wondering if you guys did incorporate AI into XR or VR, and if that improved or made anything worse, and why it would.
Great question. So I do touch on it a little bit later, but I think it's only briefly, so I'll answer it here. And it's a great way that you asked it too, because there are definitely ways that it has decreased the usability of the simulations, or just the optimization in general. So on the good side of AI, we found it great for like soft skills. So when you're communicating with somebody, and instead of having a conversation tree where an avatar says something to you and then you have to select how to respond, and then you follow kind of that branch of a tree, having an AI that you can have a natural conversation with is something that we've been exploring a lot. We've done some policing simulations, so we've integrated AI for like de-escalation type scenarios. and we want to bring that into firefighting as well. So that's been incredible. Also for like large scale fires, we've been talking with the National Research Council lately, and in January they released an AI model that can model how a fire spreads on the wildfire level. So seeing like that spreading across like a whole province or a large area of a province is very helpful and something we couldn't do without AI. But when it comes to fire spreading and smoke spreading within a house, that's an area that we want to make very realistic. So we thought AI might be a solution there, but it actually kind of lessened the control that we had over how the fire spreads, which at the end of the day actually made it less natural because we couldn't kind of put in our firefighters' feedback of how the fire was supposed to be spreading. That said, maybe we just need to train the model a lot more and put a lot more work into it, but it decreased the realism of the simulation, at least currently, by having that kind of small scale fire in just one building and using the AI to create how it flows.
And my question was, like, have you ever, or were you interested in conducting any studies, or have you done studies on it, on the program that you're running, just to kind of capture the effectiveness of it?
Yeah, so we did some very base level studies with Conestoga College, more just like a pre-survey, post-survey type of study with them, and it wasn't like published or anything or peer reviewed. So very basic level. Glad that Matt's here, because now that we're integrating cognitive 3D into our simulations over the coming months, it's definitely an area that we want to look into running a full study where we have 20 to 100 firefighters that are doing the regular training and 20 to 100 firefighters that do the VR training, and be able to compare those statistics. So definitely an area. Yeah.
Okay, so there's a possible collaboration with our students.
For sure,
Okay.
yes.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks for answering.
For sure. Awesome. Well, now most of the simulations, I think the first one that I'll show here, I guess I'll pull it up. Yeah, this is one of our simulations as well, but the rest are others that are just really innovative in the space. So just to give some examples, in the policing space, this is a CSI forensic investigation simulation that we built out. So we're seeing this as a great use case for virtual reality, where you can create all kinds of different forensic scenes that you, again, have to go in with all of your tools, whether you're dusting for fingerprints, collecting blood samples, just collecting evidence in general. A great way for especially college students to go in and recognize, how do you cordon off an area? What is the right procedure of taking photos, dusting for fingerprints, collecting evidence, what bags to use for collecting evidence. So all those kind of like basic level skills. And you can see here all the tools that are available. So yeah, just another great use case. And you can see we made some money with our faces on it, and brands that were made up so that we weren't hitting any copywriting issues. Let's see here. So the next one, also police related, this is Axon. So Axon creates all of the tasers that police officers use. They're the inventor of the taser. They also create or manufacture most of the body cameras that police wear these days. And their whole mission is to make policing non-lethal and decrease any or eliminate any police-related deaths. And so they've been doing an incredible job now bringing this into VR to better train people. So you'll see in this video, they work with HTC for their hardware, and this allows them to be completely mobile, and they have built out a special taser that has a tracker built into it that connects to the HTC headset, so they can do these like practice shooting range type training. But then you'll see in a second, it also gets much more realistic. So here they're kind of just testing out their skills, getting feedback of how they were using the taser. And then I'll just fast forward a second here. Then they have these scenes that are obviously much more realistic, where they're approaching somebody that is an avatar that I believe they have some sort of AI integration, or they also just have controls of somebody on a computer controlling what that avatar is doing. And you're having a conversation with them, trying to de-escalate the situation so you don't have to take out the taser. And then if it does escalate, you're able to take out your taser or a gun to have those different options there. And just a great way to train, where police officers, from my understanding from the work that we've done in the space so far, the training that they're doing on a monthly basis is going to a shooting range, and there's a target at the end of the hallway that they're shooting at, and that's a lot of their training. So now being able to go into a scenario where you're having a conversation with that target and actually making sure that you're understanding how to de-escalate, I think is a huge improvement on the training there. Jasbir.
So when you're speaking about de-escalation, is it more about speaking to them? And then if so, how do you kind of measure that? It was like, oh, he said the right words and it's going to de-escalate. How do you do that?
Yeah, so I don't know how Axon does it. I think there's different levels to it. So the most basic level is that you just have a trainer there that is the one that normally marks you on how you communicate, and they're trained on tracking that. So they're just marking you as you're going through the VR simulation.
Yeah.
Kind of the next level up, or maybe really the same level, is conversation trees. So you're not having a conversation with an AI, it's just an avatar that walks up, they say something, and then the simulation almost pauses and you have to select from one of 4 selections. And that kind of just teaches you which one is the right one. A lot of them will be kind of blur the line of, is this the right one or not? Or like, there's 3 options out of these 4 that seem like the right options. But then the final level is having an AI conversation and tracking and transcribing what you say, so you can pull out what are like keywords that you use that were either good or bad, but also tracking your tone, eye contact, those sorts of things as you're having the conversation.
Wow, so there is a structure. There's multiple choice questions. That's interesting. Wow.
Yeah, it depends which level you're at, but yeah, no, there's different ways. Yeah. And then there's quite a few different medical simulations out there. I think SimX is one of the best when it comes to first responders, so like non-hospital side of things, and paramedics. And so I've tried out a couple of their simulations, and I'm always like really impressed by just having all of the tools. You can have a conversation with the patients. They have pretty realistic injuries and things on the patients, and they're tracking a lot in the background as well to understand what actions did you perform, what order did you perform them in, all those sorts of things. So just a great example on the paramedicine side of things. And as you can see, it can get pretty gruesome, obviously, but that is the job they do. So obviously they need to train on that. And I guess to that point, something that we've seen be very interesting when it comes to first responders, but really any job that you're entering into that might be high stress, putting people into virtual reality can be a great way to see if these people are ready for the position. So making sure that they're actually able to handle seeing blood, or the noises that they're going to hear, or the confrontations that they're going to face when they're meeting new people, and people aren't too happy sometimes to meet cops or even paramedics. So being able to go through that and understand that this is a career that you want to go into is also a very interesting use case for these types of scenarios. And I guess going back to your question there, like this is how SimX does it. So with SimX, it is kind of all these like pre-created responses that people can have. So you say something, and then there's a trainer outside of the simulation that has this control panel, and then they can select how to respond to whatever you said. So one of those ways that you're kind of following the multiple choice to a certain degree, but I guess switching it around. I think this might be the last example. This kind of comes out of the training space, but really interesting. If you don't know Vario, they're kind of the leading headset manufacturer when it comes to high-end headsets. You might have one for research in your lab because I know it's used for a lot of research. But Headwall is a company that works with Vario that allows kind of a mobile command unit. So normally when a firefighter or an incident command firefighter shows up to a scene, they have like a pickup truck that has all kinds of whiteboards and maybe screens in the back of the pickup truck, and that's how they monitor the incident. With this, you have all the video feeds coming into VR, you have a mini map in front of you. So when you're faced with a large emergency, you can use this as your mobile command unit where you just pull it out and you're able to monitor what's going on and see all of the data that's available to you. All right, so for those interested on the business and like kind of a little bit of the background tech side, I just wanted to go into a little bit more of how that works, at least on the XpertVR side of things. So for us, how we help fire departments and how I think a lot of companies out there today help fire departments and other first responders, kind of three ways. So number one is just consulting packages where people come in and they say like, SimX is really cool technology, Axon's really cool technology. Here's the hardware you need. This is the software that's ready off the shelf. We'll help you like put it all together and customize a space that you might need to train in it. Number two is us with our expert fire simulation, SimX with their library, Axon with theirs, etc. They can go to a first responder department and say, here's a library of scenarios that you can use. We're going to send updates every month. You pay your monthly or yearly subscription, and you get access to all of this. And then thirdly, custom development. I think a lot of firms, including XpertVR in the XR space, are faced right now with this early adoption curve where, well, number one, the early adoption curve, but also the research and development needed to create all of these scenarios. So for us, by partnering with the Ontario government, they pay us to develop a custom simulation, which allows us to, number one, have revenue to keep going as we're trying to like scale out our product sales. But number two, allows us to kind of do some R&D when we're developing new scenarios for the Ontario government that then we can feed into our product and other people can get access to, or at least pieces of them can be fed in there. And then for those interested on the hardware side, this is kind of the package that we follow at XpertVR. We work with really all the major hardware out there, but we found that Pico is kind of the most open headset for developers and what we want to do. It gives us a lot more control as well on the multi-device management side of things already built into Pico instead of working with an Arbor XR or Manage XR. So incredible like enterprise level headset. Then we add in extra batteries, very important for training. If you're doing an 8-hour training session, being able to hot swap batteries out so people can train for extended hours. We have a commander laptop so you can view everything live time as people are going through, and then having it all in a nice compact mobile carrying case so you can take it around anywhere. And then we like to partner with CleanBox. They have these UV cleaning boxes. You put a headset in there, it cleans it in 60 seconds so that you can switch it between people. And then a little bit more on the technical side, or just how our simulations work and how I think a lot of people, or where a lot of people are heading. I think scenario design is going to become very important. So right now we have this incredible library of scenarios that are pre-built. We've partnered with fire departments to build out these scenarios that are true to life and allow you to train on all sorts of different things that may happen in the real world. But where we're heading and where we think a lot of people are heading is scenario creation. So giving those tools to the firefighters so that they can design their own scenarios on the fly. And additionally, adding to that instructor tools so that you as a trainer outside of the simulation can be watching what are your firefighters doing and change the scenario as it's happening if they're doing really well or if they aren't doing so well, so that you can continue improving their skills or narrow in on areas where they need more improvement. So what that looks like, this is our basic scenario library, so you have all kinds of different scenarios and different environments. If you're the commander or if you are in the simulation by yourself, you can see some information about that scenario, and then you enter in and you go through the scenario. What we're building on the creation side of things and what's being released in September or early fall is this scenario creation. So I'll show you a video after this of what it's kind of looking like, but basically you select your environment, you select what assets you want to put into that environment, and then you finalize the scenario by deciding what windows, doors, different things are locked, unlocked, if the fire alarm is on, if you want certain media in that scenario, etc. So what that looks like, keeping it very simple for somebody with no technical skills, just a basic dashboard where you have your environments, you decide you want to make a custom environment, you drag a fire in there, you select what patients you want to put into the fire or into the environment. There's select spots you can place them in, you drag them in, and then you have your scenario and you're ready to go. So this just allows anybody to very quickly create a scenario without any technical skills, but being able to have all kinds of variations so that as people are going in and training day after day, they're not getting into a routine where they're like, oh yeah, the patient is in this room and I need to run and get them there. The fire's in this room and I've done the scenario. It's always kind of a surprise. And then I guess this is a little firefighter technical, but just some of the tools that we offer and how we've worked our simulations is we have a limited amount of tools on the apparatus, on the actual truck. So these are tools that in the real world, like a great example is a thermal imaging camera or a TIC. In the real world, this is a newer technology. It allows you to scan a building and find where the fire is because you can see the thermal heat coming off of that fire. This is something that is such new technology that a fire department usually only has one per crew. So in past, we had it where everybody had access to one of these tools, and that is something that you can still do, but we've also now limited it that if you want to only have one per crew, there's only one available on the apparatus, and this allows crews to practice with resource management and communication and saying, okay, you are the thermal imaging guy, you're going to go in, you're going to be using that camera, and you have to communicate what you're seeing back to the rest of the crew. So adding kind of that resource management side where you have to really be working as a team. And then we still have some tools that every firefighter would have. And then as we're building new simulations, there's some additional tools. These are all related to lithium ion. So we're currently building out some simulations around EV fires and phone fires and lithium ion related emergencies. And then talking about the tools within a simulation and what we currently have and where we're heading. We allow you to see everything that people are doing so that you can monitor your trainees going through the simulation. And this is just really important for any immediate feedback that you need to give somebody. So if you want somebody to succeed in a simulation and they're really struggling, you can check what they're seeing and give them some feedback so that they can steer clear of a hurdle that they're currently struggling with. Commander view, same thing, zooming in on one person as they're going through, monitoring some of their vital information, like how much air they have left in their tank, where they are in a simulation in relation to other firefighters and the actual fire and other things in the simulation. So just a great way to be monitoring that specific person and giving them feedback. Then being able to actually jump into the simulation. We've seen this be important so that a trainer can actually enter into the simulation and give people direction instead of just being a voice that you're hearing outside of the VR headset. They can actually be in there with you. And then lastly, I briefly mentioned earlier, but live triggers we found as a really interesting way to enhance the simulations, where you don't just have one scenario people are going through and they're running through that scenario multiple times, or they're advanced firefighters, so they're flying through the simulation. Being able to have them go in and then have debris fall behind them, so now they can't exit out the same way, or have their SCBA, like their breathing apparatus, malfunction. So now they're like, oh, I'm out of air, I need to get out of this house immediately. Having those controls so that the more advanced firefighters can practice their skills at a more advanced level. And cognitive 3D, look at that. So after action reviews, a very important part of the simulation that honestly we've been lacking on over the past couple of years. We have very basic information normally of like, where did somebody go throughout a simulation? What were some of the actions that they did, and the timing of the simulation. But we're currently integrating cognitive 3D. Actually had a call with Tony, the CEO, this morning, so some great things happening. And I have a video here from one of Cognitive's sales employees, but it's 7 minutes long, so I'll kind of just drag through it here. But so for those that don't know about Cognitive, and Matt, I feel kind of self-conscious here because I'm walking through your platform. But basically, Cognitive 3D has this amazing dashboard that I kind of look at this first part of the dashboard as something that developers can use. So us at XpertVR, we can look at this to understand, are people comfortable as they're going through the simulation? Are they present? Are they bumping into the walls of your boundary and actually interacting, moving their hands? And what's the performance of the simulation? Are we having frame rates drop in certain areas? So this just gives us a lot of feedback of where we might need to improve, or where there might be issues with hardware that trainees are using. But then the most interesting part, fast forwarding here, is tracking everything throughout the simulation. So you can see here, Paul's walking through a manufacturing simulation where Cognitive has matched or marked certain objects throughout the simulation. So the hard hat, the breaker door, the lockout box, and we're able to track, did somebody actually put on their hard hat? When did they look at the breaker door? How long did they look at the breaker door? All this sort of information to really understand if they are completing each step of the training that they should be doing and what order they're doing those in. And fast forwarding or just scrolling down here, we can then see the total number of sessions that people went through, so that you can compare if there's a problem, if somebody's really struggling, you can compare, is this something that everybody's struggling with, where, okay, everyone completed step 1, there's a bit of a fall off at step 2, and then it continues to fall off afterwards. Okay, this might be a problem with the whole simulation. Whereas if there was one person that didn't complete, and these numbers are at like 90% across the board, okay, great, this is something that needs to be improved on the trainee level. And once you know that, you can go in, you're looking at each of the trainees, seeing who completed what, where did they get to, and then you can click on a specific trainee. And see more information about them. But then you can go into this 3D view, which is really incredible to allow, and this is one of the main reasons we're working with Cognitive 3D, is to be able to actually go in and move around the scene and see what somebody did and see where they looked. It turns on in a second here. Yeah, so having heat maps to see where did they look throughout the simulation, and really just follow them step by step, so that as you're sitting down as a trainer, you can bring this up and give them live feedback and say, this is you going through the simulation. Here's the areas where you did really well. Here are the areas where you made mistakes. Next time you go in, you're going to remember that conversation you had with the trainer, because you have this very visual data to understand and to remember moving forward. And similarly, just a great look at where everybody was looking or where they were going within a simulation from this top-down perspective. And so this is bringing all of the data together from multiple people within the simulation. And so just really powerful tools here to give feedback and ensure that you're not just going through the training for fun, you're actually improving on what you learned. I guess, Matt, anything that I'm missing here, anything that you wish I would have commented on as I was going through?
No, you're doing great, Evan. I didn't expect you to chat about it even in this level of detail, so thank you very much. Yeah.
No, for sure. I think it's a huge part of what we're trying to do at XpertVR right now, and I think it's really adding to the future of VR training, because without this sort of data, you don't know if it's actually helping people. And then wrapping up here, just looking at future expansion, whether it's us at XpertVR, or other companies. I think there's kind of three main areas, and I guess I kind of put a few together under these buckets, but just in general, making more scenarios. So we're always adding new environments, like airports and cruise ships are a big area that we want to get into. So adding in these other environments so that people can train in all sorts of different types of scenarios. Secondly, like we talked about earlier, lots of great ideas around AI integration. An example I put down here is DecisiSolve. They're an AI company for firefighters and paramedics to create scenarios in a paper-based way. So basically, you put in your information of what resources your department has, what you want to train on that day, and it builds a training curriculum for you on paper, and then you can roll that out as a training officer. But we would like to look at how can we integrate that into our simulation so that instead of even having to drag and drop things to create a scenario, you can go in, type to DecisiSolve, and then it will give you a scenario in VR ready to go. And then lastly, mixed reality and hardware accessories. Talked about earlier how a lot of the hardware accessories don't necessarily add too much to the simulations from what we've seen so far. That being said, gloves and treadmills are areas that I think are at very early stages right now, but as they become more readily available and a higher quality, it will allow us to get away from controllers and the types of locomotion that we're currently using to move throughout a simulation to make it much more realistic. And then mixed reality, kind of similarly, instead of having to be fully in virtual reality, we can create these amazing simulations that use our physical world. Nikki, I see you have your hand raised there. Sorry.
Hey, thanks. I'm also from Cognitive 3D, by the way. We've crashed your party. So I was wondering sort of what you think about, like when you think about VR training and you comparison to like a video that you're watching. And from what you've shown today, it really seems like a lot of the training is sort of scenario based. So like, what do I do with what tool when? You know, so you kind of go through like, how do I actually move through the house, that kind of stuff. But how important do you think the kind of physical part of that is? Like VR, at least compared to video, allows you to move your head, your arms a little bit, though it's not quite realistic. Like, how do you think that plays into the effectiveness of VR training?
Yeah, I think there's definitely areas where it can improve. What we found so far is like the most base level physical parts of it are necessary. So for example, when you're in a simulation, in one of our firefighting simulations, you're either walking around or you're crawling. And so for crawling, we measure your height at the start of the simulation, and you actually have to get onto your knees and like be in a crawling position, and that makes it feel that realistic. That being said, areas that might improve in the future, but that we've kind of avoided right now, are the fully realistic interactions. So like breaking down a door, I think you saw an example in there where you put this halogen bar into the door and then you're slamming into it with an axe. And we had that in one of our original simulations, and some of our clients still use it, but we've actually started to avoid those sorts of interactions because it's something that firefighters can easily practice in the real world with the real tools. And there just isn't that feedback of hitting an axe into a halogen bar in virtual reality. So I think it's limiting. What I'm getting at is limit the interactions that can be done easily in the real world and that they can train on, because they can do that in the real world and they don't need that training in the virtual world, and focus on the areas where you can mimic it as good as possible so that you're following the right actions that you would do in the physical world.
Yeah,
hopefully that makes sense.
That makes total sense. Yeah, thanks. That's a great answer. Yeah, awesome.
For sure. Great. I think got one or two more slides left here. Yeah, just looking at the future. Great example here from Vario. They have their new teleport technology. So right now it kind of just allows you to scan an area. I believe it uses Gaussian splatting to scan an environment and create an environment that you can walk through. Currently, it's not interactive necessarily. You're just moving throughout the environment. But this is an area that we're really watching into the future, where we could take any environment and bring it into the virtual world and then layer fires and other objects and vehicles, etc., into that environment to create a scenario that looks hyper realistic. And so just really cool tool that's available for headsets outside of Vario as well, and just a great step forward in the technology. And I believe this is the last one. So this is Durham College here in Ontario. They worked with Oshawa Fire, a large fire department, and this is their mixed reality. So just really impressed with this. It was released a few months ago, where basically firefighters can put on a headset. As you can see, they have a dummy in the real world, but then all of the walls and the smoke are all virtual. So using mixed reality to create your own scenarios in the space that you have, that allow you to kind of train some of those basic skills. Just a really interesting way that they're using mixed reality and experimenting with at Durham College. So I wanted to share kind of where that's heading. Yeah, that's my presentation. I see I went a little bit over time, but I think we got some questions in. So yeah, let me know if you have any other questions.
Thank you, Evan. So yeah, we can go to the floor for any questions anyone has.
Yeah, Dr. Dastur.
Yeah, thank you, Evan. My mind is exploding with questions and ideas and things I want to follow up on. So thank you for a really inspiring and stimulating talk. You've probably thought of this, but obviously training opportunities using VR and mixed reality, which is super exciting, extend to so many areas. I mean, I'm thinking nuclear, I'm thinking aviation, trucking, transportation in general. Do you plan to move into those sectors, or do you really want to keep it focused and just, be the best of what you're doing in that area?
Yeah, so we were more of a general VR development studio a couple of years ago, and it kind of was our bread and butter. So we've worked on all kinds of different skill sets, both at the college level and the enterprise level. We found that the more we narrowed in on our specialty and our niche, the more people started reaching out to us and saying, like, you guys are the VR firefighting guys, we should be working with you. So for the foreseeable future, we are focusing on firefighting. I would say in the next 3 to 5 years, we may start to branch back out into the paramedicine and policing areas. I guess looking at our ideal future, we would love to create like a city that has your normal like downtown city, like Toronto, Vancouver space, but then also has suburbs and industrial areas. And there's like always emergencies going on in that space. And that way police, fire, paramedicine can all practice together. And then who knows, building out these frameworks, like building out this authoring tool so that you can place objects in any environment, we could start to build out other skill sets, other tools that people can use in all kinds of other areas. So it might be an area we branch back into, but currently we're very focused on the first responder and firefighting space.
Very interesting.
Shane, I think you were next.
Yes, thank you for the presentation. It was very insightful, and I really loved learning about every little aspect, even from like the hardware and your software development. My question is, how would you like to see your programs implemented? Like, would you like to see this in local firefighter stations in Ontario, BC? Would you like to see it more in college training programs, or even just universities? Here at like Kwantlen, we don't have a firefighter training program, but we could like have that an option here.
Yeah, I guess the answer is all of the above when it comes to firefighter training. Currently, our partnership with Ontario Fire, it just started up a month and a half ago now. So we're currently in development stages, and by early next year, we'll be releasing it. But that will be free to all fire departments in Ontario. So basically, Ontario Fire, they're taking 40 headsets around to different fire departments to introduce them to virtual reality. But the hope there is that they see the value in this training, and then they can buy their own headsets at a reasonable price, but all the software is completely for free. So yeah, the hope there is that they all have access to it. Obviously, colleges and others are, well, all the colleges in Ontario actually would get access to it as well. So the hope there is that they're kind of training the basic level skills, then they get hired on as firefighters, and it's the same system they're using, and now they can practice the more advanced skills. And then when it comes to KPU and other areas that aren't necessarily firefighter focused, I think we're not as entrenched or trying to be as entrenched there, but the public education side of things, of like, how do you make sure that your smoke alarms are working properly, or that your lithium ion devices are charging properly? All those sorts of things are areas that we want to just educate the general public.
Yeah, I think that would be really cool, especially maybe even teaching someone how to put out like an oil or grease fire at public education would be really helpful.
Exactly.
But thank you.
Thank you. Reesha, I see your hands up as well.
So this doesn't directly relate to first responders, but while you were talking, I was thinking I am aiming to be a clinical psychologist, which is a very high goal. So I was looking at your slides and wondering, from your perspective, how do you believe VR and XR could help diagnosing a person in a clinical psychologist perspective? I don't know if you know anything on this topic. I don't, but I'm like, I feel like I would be interested.
Yeah, I don't know a ton. There's definitely some simulations out there for kind of like meditation. I believe there's a couple like simulations where you're like meeting with therapists and that side of things. I would say on the diagnosis side of things, I'd be a little bit wary of the VR doing the full diagnosis or AI in that VR doing the full diagnosis. I think it's a lot more interesting on your side, becoming that, moving into that space, to be practicing and to be having conversations with virtual avatars and seeing how they react and getting grades on the types of questions that you asked, and how they responded. A great example of that, not in that space, but in soft skills in general, is Body Swaps VR. If you look them up, they have an incredible VR AI that you can have a conversation with, and they respond. You have this full conversation, and then after you have that conversation, it actually body swaps you. So now you're sitting in the position of that avatar, listening to yourself talk to you. So you kind of get put into their shoes and see like how your response may have affected you. So I think that's the more interesting area around the training, at least right now, until the technology is a lot more viable, because obviously you don't want to give the wrong diagnosis to somebody that's struggling or going through anything.
Thank you, Evan. I'll definitely look that up.
For sure. Happy to share. Awesome. Well, I guess last thing I'll say is there's my email, evan@expertvr.com. I'm usually pretty active on LinkedIn. The past couple of months have been hectic, so I haven't been as much, but I still check my messages. So feel free to reach out, email or LinkedIn, and happy to answer any other questions that you or anybody listening might have.
I would like to say thank you to everybody joining us for contributing to the success of this event. I would also like to give a very special round of applause to Evan and my deepest gratitude for you sharing your incredible expertise and inspiring work. Your work and your passion for advancing VR emergencies and technologies have truly left us with a lot to reflect on and aspire towards. To our audience, thank you for your thoughtful engagement and participation. We hope you found today's session both informative and inspiring. I know I did, so we look forward to seeing you at future events, and I'm wishing you all a very wonderful day. And Evan, thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much for having me, and yeah, thank you for everyone that was listening. And I'll definitely have to make a visit to KPU next time I'm out in BC. We're trying to do a lot of work out there related to wildfires in the near future, so hopefully I'll be out in the area.
Thank you so much, Evan.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.